You're live.
Okay, we are live. This is the Senate Education Committee on Wednesday, February 19th at 1:30. And today, the first thing we have is we have a guest, Sarah Tetzlaff, who is the principal of the middle school in Rutland City. Is that correct?
Principal of Rutland Town School, which is a pre-K through 8th grade school.
Okay.
Mhm.
And really the point here is we've had a couple of independent school people speak, and we had a visit to Montpelier High School. The Catholic committee was out yesterday, so we couldn't go. But we're trying to get just some testimony of sort of life on the ground. We tend to hear from superintendents and people from the agency, and so I wanted to hear from a public school principal just about some of the challenges and opportunities and things that are going well, and some of the programmatic things that you're doing. That really might find interesting. All of this is a way of background for getting ready for the big bill we'll be taking on soon. It's out. So we'll introduce ourselves, starting over here.
Hi, yes, Senator Keisha Romney-Dale, Chittenden, Southeast.
Hi, I'm Nara Shingwin County.
Gabe Weeks, Rutland County, you are, your family, are my constituents.
Seth Lundgren from Bennington Senate District.
Barry Williams from Rutland.
Steve Heffernan from Madison County.
So
You brought your family.
I did, yes. Do you want to introduce yourself, Marian?
My name's Noria.
Ethan, you want to say who you are?
Well, my name is Ethan. I'm from Rutland.
I used to go with my mom to work everywhere.
so the floor is yours.
Yes. So thank you everybody so much for having me, and thank you for your public service. I know that you give endless hours, and really it comes to helping these little people behind me. So your work does not go unnoticed. Thank you. And you have quite the challenge ahead of you. So I was excited and honored just to be able to speak a little bit about what my day-to-day is at Rutland Town. So I've been there for 12 years. I'm now going into my 13th year. We have 350 students, approximately preschool through 8th grade. And Rutland Town's demographic is interesting in that there's a lot of affluent community families, but there's also a lot of a homeless population that we have. That's drastically changed what the school has looked like, I would say, in the past decade or so. So I started out as assistant principal. I then, when I was pregnant with Ethan, was co-principal, and I'm in my 4th year of being principal. And one of the challenges is finding an assistant principal in leadership. So my last 2 principals have lasted 2 years, both of them, the assistants, and have just said, like, I don't want to work this hard. And that's pretty telling. It is, you name it, I do it. So from helping to transport kids in a van, our custodial staff that, we struggle, substitute teaching, being in the kitchen, like you name it, I'll jump in and do it. And it's grueling. And I think with one of the big changes that I've seen is with the voucher program with our families.
You mean motel vouchers?
Motel vouchers, I apologize, yes. That has been very challenging on the systems within schools, draining on resources. And what's also challenging within that is that a lot of my families that are in these homeless hotels are addicts, and some of them are recovering addicts. And by putting these families in these situations, all of them have relapsed. And almost all but one have stayed within those homeless voucher programs. So there's not really an out for them. We're blessed that, local churches deliver food, schools do a ton. I mean, I myself have clothed lots of kids. There's no playground or area for these children also. So really school is the best place for these kids because they are fed, they're clothed, they're taken care of. But that's been one of the biggest challenges. A lot of these kids that come to us have significant needs all around, socially, emotionally, academically. Most of them require special education services. A lot of them require aids. They require a lot of support. So as we all know, finding people is difficult. So when you have paraeducators, which are often the least experienced, the least qualified, they're working with some of our neediest kids, and finding them is really difficult. So I am very blessed that our teachers, we just do it. We do what's best. We cover for kids. We help support each other. But finding the resources is training, and the mental health resources, the number of kids that I have that have been on wait list for over a year for counselors and other supports is endless. There's just not those counselors around. And what our kids are exposed to in these homeless hotels is pretty scary. So again, I've transported kids to and from some of these hotels. I had to attend with two of my staff members to look at a mugshot because there were some registered sex offenders doing some really inappropriate things as we're dropping children off in this location. So it is rough. And again, it's just not the best place for these kids to be, and there's no out. So most of the families aren't working. And again, they're just really struggling with substance abuse. And the kids will tell you, I know when our governor went to visit the Cortina in particular, one of my students said, "Just text staff, can you change my bus stop? Because we all have to go move to the Hampton Inn next week or this week because the governor is coming to visit." I was like, "Sure, we can change your bus stop. No problem. We'll pick you guys up." So I think that's just really draining. And that takes an emotional toll on my staff, because we have made our DCF phone calls, our referrals to Department of Children and Family Services has just increased year after year and increased. And we often just feel like nothing's being done to help these kids. So that's one big thing that every day, my day is different depending on who walks through the door. Because as you know, if they're homeless, as soon as they show up, you have to enroll them right away. You don't wait for paperwork. You don't wait for records from the other school. We get them into school. So,
Senator.
Question on how many are from out of state? Is it mostly all interstate and they're just moving around, or?
quite a few have been from New York. I don't have numbers, but quite a few are from neighboring towns. Some are from Vermont, but I would say the next would be from New York.
What do you think the number is?
Are telling me right now. Some of them have also, I've had a few out of state that have moved to Vermont. They'll say like for the benefits for the education. So that's hard for me to put a number on it. And some of them are still transient too. But as I'm sure you know, the McKenna-Venti Act, the homeless law. So when a student is, the Cortina is now shut down for a period of time. That's where a lot of our students were that were homeless. They are able to attend our school until they find permanent housing. So that again just puts a strain on trying to find transportation, trying to make sure the kids can get to and from school safely. So even if they're living in Rutland City or in Bennington, if they choose to continue attending Rutland Town, we're responsible for providing that transportation.
Why is that? Because in our law, we provide the education, not the transportation.
Yeah, we have to provide transportation to and from, and oftentimes these families don't have transportation.
I'm just, where is that written in law that you have to do that?
I'm not sure. It's a good question. Yeah,
Probably a good question for legal counsel.
yeah, yeah.
Not that it isn't important, don't get me wrong, it's just
Right.
that
And that is-
resources
yeah.
are being spent.
Our business manager will look and say, "Sarah, you've got to be kidding me. Like, this is how much you're paid to transport one family." And I said, "Yeah." We've even had to contract with like limousine services in the past because we can't find drivers.
So talk to us about, I mean, we're sort of mostly focusing on the kids, and the kids that have, come from the homeless. Just talk about some of the things that, let's work about some of the things that you do for those children. You already have some,
Yeah.
and how much of it is programmatic and how much of it is ad hoc that you just do because you're good human beings and those kinds of things.
Yeah, I think some of it is, we as teachers, we just do what's best for kids. So we're gonna find clothes for them. We're gonna get snacks for them. Head lice is a big thing. Make you start to itch. We were nervous about bed bugs at one point, but the chronic head lice when kids are coming in, they're going right back to an environment with that. So that impacts, we have a full-time school nurse. We have diabetic kids with multiple, medical needs. And that again is training resources on the nurse or even myself. I've had to go to the pharmacy to get more treatments for kids with head lice. And if you're not, you have to create a comfortable learning environment first. Kids that have come in without undergarments, without socks, snow clothes, we leave those things at school. So some of these things we just do as teachers, but the increase that this has had and the draining of these resources. And my team just shows up. They're incredible. I would not have continued in my position if it wasn't for the incredible teachers and staff that I work with. I mean, from custodians, bus drivers, you name it. We all do what we do because we believe that we're going to raise polite, kind, respectful, hardworking kids. I'm going to do it, and I'm doing it. But sometimes I've had a few that have had to tag out, mainly because of the emotion drain.
Triple full funders.
We do have a full-time nurse. She is retiring. I have 2 applicants right now. So that also has been a big change in education. In 10 years, I was just telling my superintendent, 10 years ago, I hired a PE health teacher. I had over 70 licensed applicants. So I saw a spelling error, grammatical error, didn't address it to me on a cover letter. That would go. Right now can they work in the United States? Do they have a license? Can they pass a background check? So I have 2 that have applied, and 1 is a licensed nurse, but not licensed within education. So that can take some time. The other strain of that is that nurses will make oftentimes 4 times what they will make in a school.
Thank you. Regarding staff, I'm curious if you could speak generally or specifically about things that we could do regarding burdens. I've heard often that actually teaching it almost becomes a side project because there's so much paperwork and bureaucracy that public school teachers and staff have to go through, and principals. And I think it would be great if we could find a way to reduce that burden in such a way that teachers and other staff can do the thing that they signed up to do in the schools. So do you have any thoughts on that?
Can you restate your question originally?
Sure, it was kind of long-winded. Are there things that we can do to reduce the administrative and bureaucratic burdens on teachers and staff in schools?
Ooh, that is $1 million question. Because I feel that that's a large part of my job too, right? I need to create a comfortable and safe learning environment for you. And after COVID, there was a lot of schools that did a lot of social emotional learning and all this. And I was like, we are back to the books. We got to get back in the routine. And that's kind of been our MO. And I think the proof is in the pudding. Our school has done really well because we need to focus on, and we can incorporate those social emotional skills within our lessons, math, science, you name it. But I really got back to that. I would be really interested to hear what my teachers have to say about that. I think some of it is just time. Like they would love teacher time to work together. We have incredibly talented staff at my building, and they will often say, Sarah, can I please just have like 2 hours to work with the grade level up and below and share what I'm doing and what's working? That's what I hear a lot of.
And why can't that? And that doesn't, and it's hard to make that happen because
we work in a supervisory union and we've merged districts too. So that has been a challenge in that oftentimes we have to wait until somebody above us says, yes, you can use your time to do this. Yes, you can use your time to do that. And one of the things that I pride myself in is that when I've seen a need, so literacy, I was speaking about that when we had spoken earlier this week. About 10 years ago, with my teachers, we had realized that we weren't making the gains in our readers as much as we should. Fast forward, we got into the science of reading way before it was this hashtag after COVID. So we looked and was like, what is a research-based, brain-based way to teach kids to read and to write? So we went ahead as our own school and did that. Now that we're more part of the supervisory union, everybody has to kind of be on that same page before you move forward. So I think that's hard. As times when we see something that's going to work, we can't just act on it because everybody has to be in the same position. And what may work well for my school, there may be another school in our district. Those teachers aren't ready. It may not fit. But I'm a pretty, we're 18, average class size is 18 kids. And again, we have the full gamut of backgrounds of students. So what I hear mainly is, can we just do what's best for our school? And can we have some of that time to collaborate with one another?
Thank you.
Yes.
So Senator Williams was next.
So you're not the exception either. I mean, you're the one that's coming and telling us about this. There are other schools I'm sure have the same problems. I remember when the 3 senators from Elton County sat through the school board meetings when you guys were talking about cutting a school bus or cutting a resource officer. You ended up saying, no, we got a good product here. We're not going to cut anything. You just need to get people out to vote. And you did that, but that doesn't solve your problems right now. So,
Yeah.
so my hats off to you for what you do.
Thank you. Thank you.
So
I just wanted to look up someone I haven't talked to in a long time, but have respected and thought about from time to time, Craig Hutvader, principal at Mount Holly. So I just remember going to visit him, and he had made statewide news for asking for a shelter and laundry service to be co-located with his school, and this was 2016. So he was well before, what we consider the latest wave of the housing crisis. He was saying, I have a lot of homeless families and, I'm trying to figure out how to take care of them on site, frankly. And I bring that up because it sounds like you end up doing a lot of the social service coordination and work, that it has to be done. What does your capacity look like there? How many, I don't know, like social workers or resource officers do you have per student? What is your level of need to take that to allow you to focus on the bigger picture and their learning?
Yeah, and it's interesting you say that. One of the things with the homeless vouchers is that all the ones I know, they don't have laundry service.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a parent that's been homeless for 3 years in my building. And we have a relationship where she felt comfortable enough to say, Ms. Tetzlaff, my kids can't come to school today. We have no clean clothes. And I was like, get them in here. We will do some laundry within here. But again, that's us doing some of this. And I would not be here if it was not for my incredible team, my behavior specialist, my family school coordinator, social worker, some of my special educators. We laugh. I'm like, I don't think your son has any clothes left in his bedroom. I was just telling her yesterday, because we'll just grab what these kids need. So I have one family school coordinator, social worker. She works around the clock. Again, a gem. Not a lot of schools have that. My behavior specialist, a couple of other people, guidance counselor, they take a lot of those things, but above and beyond, which is not, when I talk to other schools, you got to balance a little work-life balance. And we just, our hearts in it. So if there were other outside agencies doing that, I think another change within school is that there's a lot of initiatives, and it's put on schools. So it's like after school program. I am so blessed to have the Boys and Girls Club. Right. So I just wonder too about rec centers. Could they take some athletics? We upset a lot of people with that idea. Could they take some cost for summer school or during breaks? So it's not always the school. Having to figure out transportation and how to get these kids to and from these programs.
Well, thank you for what you do for the kids in your community.
Thank you. Yeah. Thanks to my team.
Can I ask one more question? I don't know. It sounds to me like consolidation hasn't helped you be more nimble necessarily.
Right.
And that is a big question for us, is how there something that might look like a solution isn't necessarily a solution unless it actually does what we hope it will do. So we're aiming to try and give schools more flexibility and freedom to move and to act.
Yeah.
But do you feel like that's something you were promised with this consolidation, or where was there a point where you wish you could have said, like, hey, this, give us our autonomy?
I just think anytime you merge philosophy, beliefs, programs, whatever, it's gonna be messy. And I think we're kind of known for if it's research based, if this is what's best for kids, we do it. Yes, maybe my hand has been slapped a few times. But when you have those teachers that are eager and ready for that, we've been able to do that. And I think some outliers of the smaller schools have come with a little more resistance. And I've also, my kids grew up, we live in Orwell. So I am from, we live in a very rural area. So I've experienced as a mom, wonderful elementary school, but that magic number 10, I started our middle school at Rutland Town probably 8 years ago. Terra Institute research, all, definitely grassroots. We started our middle school in 5th grade. So we departmentalized in 5th grade. So there was a teacher for ELA and social studies and math and science. The same thing for 6th and 7th and 8th grade. There's 4 content teachers. And that little bit of movement just in between classes has really helped decrease behaviors. I always think 5th grade recess is the worst, but you're get growing pains.
Yeah.
So my own daughter, she had 14 kids since preschool in a class. And when you're kind of out in the middle of nowhere and you have only 2 other girls in your class, her last year, I would say, was probably the roughest because those social needs. So I really think looking at and asking kids, what is it that you need? What do you wish could be different? Wonderful school, but I really worry about these rural, really tiny schools and the lack of exposure. I had some kids that registered from the Philippines, and that's another struggle, ELL. It's like, Google Translate doesn't have Tagalog.
Yeah.
What am I going to do? Where do I find an ELL person? I worked in Burlington. I know the importance. I'm like, good thing, we're just going to language immersion. Here we go. But those are resources. Like, can we contract out some of those things, those services? When I talk to some of my friends in Massachusetts, another area, they contract out, like, yes, we'd love to have human people, but what can we do to fill a need that there are other people that may be cheaper too? So
I've got more questions, but
Yeah.
You want to, think you want to.
I just, a couple of other things to mention, is the free and reduced lunch forms. I know you and I were talking, about that earlier. That's, I'm very grateful that the state has now put those forms online. People need internet. People need to be able to read and follow directions to fill out those forms. And it's been a struggle. So at my school, we were about 33% free and reduced lunch 2 years ago. I think we were last year at 6 or 7%. So as many times as I can say, please fill this out, please fill this out, please fill this out. They're like, breakfast and lunch is free. I'm not filling it out. Like, what's the point? I already get this. And then when we try to, and then that impacts title funds, that impacts funding for your school. So I'm like, we have such a higher need due to the homeless population in my building, but I'm under 10% free and reduced lunch. Like, this is not fair. So we had a board member that had suggested setting up some Chromebooks at parent teacher conferences. So we had done that. Unfortunately, the website was down that evening that we started doing it. And again, unfortunately, oftentimes the parents, not all parents that receive free and reduced lunch attend parent conferences. So as much as we try to reach for that, for a variety of reasons, they're just not filling out those forms. So that's been a struggle.
No, she answered. Okay.
Yeah,
So,
sure. One other thing that's just been, as we all know, the day that, we live in a scary time now. And so we have to take all threats seriously, but the threat assessments, just due to the mental health crisis, I would say, with everybody. but especially our youngest learners, that's been a huge strain. We are very fortunate. We just hired a school resource officer. So not a lot of schools have their own school resource officer. So we are very fortunate. So he just started in January, and that sucks up a lot of resources. So I, had a threat, and that took like all of Friday for me and another staff member to go through that process, and then inform families and staff and discuss next steps. So I think that's a large part of my day. And then students that really struggle emotionally and socially, that can act out and sometimes hurt other staff member, that is very draining, because again, I have some staff that have been kicked and spit and hit at day to day. And when you can make more at Hannaford's than you can, as an educator. That's a tough thing. You really have to have a heart, and you have to be a special someone to show up every day to support some of these kids. And we just don't have the mental health facilities or the alternative schools. I've said some of these small rural schools, I'm like, build an alternative school. You build it, they will come.
Senator Williams had a question first, I think.
Yes, I'm
So
sorry.
for the last 2 years, actually, I've been involved in, the homeless prevention center and going to different meetings. And one of the people that were at those meetings were great. A lot of them volunteered their time. And the question they always had is, why do they all keep coming here? They keep coming there because they're taken care of, which is the way it should be too. And, I remember, you can't pass school budget. You can't provide the things that you provide.
Mhm.
So I'm just giving you a compliment that you're obviously taking care of those people. And that's why they come here.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Do you believe that is there a set of protocols that students have to follow when they come in at all? Like you were just saying, if they spit or if they kick or if they swear, is there protocols and is it pretty standard throughout, or is every school different?
Every school is different, but you have school rules that you need to follow, and there's consequences if you don't. But oftentimes these kids, they come from such a rough background for a variety of reasons. It's our responsibility to educate them. And so it is our responsibility. And sometimes my public school may not be the best fit for them. And that's a tough, I pride myself in kids. I've had kids from alternative schools, and I've been their parent. I've worked with my behavior specialists, and I'll slowly bring them into the classroom and say, these are the rules of Rutland Town. This is how we respect and speak to one another. And that works probably 98% of the time. But then sometimes there are kids with just such significant needs that they need a therapeutic environment, because they're impacting the learning of everybody. And that just is a long process, an expensive process. And we just don't have those facilities in Vermont. We don't. And there's a waiting list too.
And if you have one child acting out in a class, what happens? Really acting out, like being a disruption to the class, what happens to the class?
Then either that student is removed, or sometimes the whole class is removed. So I am trained in crisis prevention intervention, and I'm one of the trainers for my school district, along with my behavior specialist and another behavior specialist. So we teach others on how to de-escalate, and hands-on is last resort.
All right.
What do you talk about your after school programs?
Sure. Yeah. So
Who are they targeting? Who utilizes them?
yeah, I was very fortunate that one of our school board members had a contact, because we had an after school program within our district that was wonderful, but they couldn't staff it. So it went like 8 months we didn't have staff, we didn't have anything. And I had so many parents that were like, Sarah, I have to work. Like I can't find anybody. There were kids, I'm sure, that were left home alone that should not be left home alone. So a board member had dropped a name for the Boys and Girls Club of Rutland County. We reached out to them, and that's that. They have been phenomenal.
They come to the school.
They come right to my school. Yep. And so kids are served a snack and dinner. They also have dinner. And then they will run our summer school program as well. So that's kindergarten through 6th grade. So then they do age out. But that, I remember when we weren't able to staff with Tapestry anymore, I told my superintendent, I said, I cannot run an after-school program. That is a full-time job. So like, I will have to walk if that's asked of me, because I think that's a big thing. So many things are put on schools about, laundry service, mental health service, nursing, and it was after school, before school.
So you haven't talked, you've talked a lot about the challenges. To talk about some of the things you're doing programmatically that you think are interesting and we might find interesting.
Yeah.
For your general school population, like
So, like I said, years ago, we started, all of our teachers were trained in the Orton Gillingham approach to reading, which is the science of reading. So all of them have had at least like one class of that, and then just continue their professional development. And I'm very fortunate, and I'm not like many schools in that my teachers are hungry to learn, and they'll do it. Not always on contracted time, which is great. They'll take a summer class and they'll do stuff on the weekends because they know it's what's best for kids. So our teachers are trained in Orton Gillingham. I'm also fortunate that we've had interventionists, both reading and math for middle and elementary. So we have a ton of safety nets academically. So if our students are not making the progress that we want, and teachers are working with them, there's a whole multi-tier system or process that we follow. They can then receive services from an interventionist or a special educator that are just extremely well trained. So when I look at other schools, they may have somebody right out of school or they're on an emergency license and they're teaching some of those neediest kids. I don't do that. Our best teachers are teaching those neediest kids. So those are some good things. Then we started noticing our reading's really solid right now, our phonics skills. And this is the first year that we have started with keys to literacy. Again, research-based writing. We just want to make sure these kids are not on a screen all the time. They got to be able to read and write. We still teach cursive in 3rd grade. So again, it's really back to the books with some of that. So we've started at a school board meeting. One of my reading teachers who's just incredible. She shared about our professional development around writing, and we came up with our writing beliefs and how do we incorporate writing across different subject areas. So that's one thing that we're doing. We have a really strong math curriculum that we've had for years, Bridges, and we're continuing that. We're trying to focus more on science as well. But just having that baseline kind of before COVID was priceless.
And you did what you've been describing on your own at the school.
Yes.
Senator Wood, should your hand up. Okay.
If you feel comfortable sharing your professional development goals, if someone like you's given a lot of your talent and treasure and time to Vermont, do you want to be a superintendent in Vermont eventually? What if a district in Boston wanted you, what you clearly have a passion for this, but we should make sure that you feel like you have a future here.
I was thinking, what classes am I going to take next? But I was like, let me see what I sign up for. I love what I do right now. But I am always hungry for a challenge for sure. So I'm excited to see what the state is going to do with, there's definitely a need for an alternative school. I do not want to be a superintendent at all. No, thank you. I want to be with kids every day. So I'm able to be with kids and with students, kids and teachers. That's what lights my fire, is seeing those kids. And those really tough kids typically are my favorite. Those really, really tough ones.
Now you have a question.
So after school programs.
Yeah.
Remember last year that we found out that there was like $4.4 million available from the marijuana tax. But it couldn't go to the LEAs. It had to go to a nonprofit. Have you got anybody in town that would consider doing a Rutland Town recreation, which and it's not just after school, it goes through the summer too. That money's available. And there are a list of, I think the deputy secretary of labor contacted me and wanted to know any schools in Rutland County that were looking for the money.
Yeah.
So
The Boys and Girls Club, are they,
they're on the list.
they're on the list,
They are.
yeah, yeah, that's who we use, and they've expanded to the other schools within my school district too.
How do the kids get home after school?
We do not provide busing. We don't provide busing in the summer, or in the after-school program, so it's up to parents to pick their kids up.
Is that a hindrance for kids to be able to?
Yes.
Yeah.
For summer.
I had one principal this summer said to me, maybe we should switch. And rather than have the buses run at 3, have them run at 5.
Mm.
And if parents want to pick the kids up early, they can, but otherwise, most kids got their after school program.
Mm.
Then the buses run.
Yeah.
So just, she's the only person who said that to me, but I heard it once. So, yes,
I'm not sure how much more time we have.
we had fun.
Okay. So Sarah, you're kind of in a unique position as the principal between you and the Secretary of Education. There's lots of prospective potential changes that are going to be happening over the next couple of years. Just wondering if you have any kind of feedback from your perspective on that layer again between you and the Agency of Education.
Yeah, I think Rutland Town School is a little different because I don't foresee a lot of change within my school building just because I have almost 20 kids in the class. I think I would like to see, I'm selfish in that we've created a middle school starting at 5th grade. And I just think there's a lot that goes on with the adolescent brain when they turn 10. So I know there's some conversations like K-6, but I almost wonder if some other things could be looked at, some other schools that do like a 5th and 6th. What does that look like? Yeah, that's a really tough question.
Well, how about, let me make it a little bit more specific. So
Okay.
your interaction with the SU,
Mhm.
how do you envision that would change if the SU becomes roughly 10,000 students?
To me, I think that's a good thing. I think it's just more level of expertise, more ability to collaborate with other teachers and share resources. So, there's a number of superintendents in a very small area where I work. And so ELL is a prime example. I'm like, just ask not to say their name, but can we just ask them for some help, please? Because I know that there's an ELL teacher and what can we share? Can I barter something with you? I have an unfit need. So to me, I think that could be an exciting opportunity.
What will Senator Weeks finish?
Okay, just a quick
Yeah.
follow on. Thanks, Scott. Your interaction with your school, that may change in this new construct. And just wondering if you had any reactions to that notion.
Yeah, and I served on the school board in Orwell for 10 years. And I remember one meeting that was highly attended was just the discussion about the front sign outside. We're going to change it. Oh my goodness, the number of people that showed up. Let's talk about changing the front sign. And what's going to happen there? I can't even imagine what's going to happen because it has always been this local control. And I've been on the other side of that table as a school board member. Get the popcorn ready. It will be interesting. Yeah, we'll see what happens. And I think it's a little scary for principals and teachers thinking, who is our boss going to be? Who's going to tell us what to do? And if this has been working for so long, do we have to change something just because another school is doing this? And what if they don't have any homeless kids there? Like, we need money to do this. That's scary.
So I've lost track of whose hands were first. Let's just go 1, 2, 3.
That's good.
Just a quick follow-up to something Senator Weeks brought up and you brought up as well. Regarding getting access to other services that, might be in another district and districts were to be expanded, how it would become easier to gain access to that. Under the current system, if there's somebody who provides a service just over in another district and they're 10 or 15 minutes away, but there just happens to be that boundary, there's nothing that you can do to get that service in your school. just wanted to make sure because that's, because I'm mulling over the district sizes that we've been talking about and, I can definitely see why it would be more beneficial and easier to get access to a certain service that might be nearby,
Mhm.
happen to be over this invisible boundary that's going with that. So just wanted to follow up on that.
Mhm.
Thank you.
So that's supposed to be the BOCES act that we passed last year. That's supposed to, but the school supervisor union has to get involved in it. And that's to share services and
Mhm.
can't remember what it stands for, but it's for special education, for ELL, BEL.
Mhm.
They're supposed to share assets if they have it. And I don't know what the implementation date was on that. I think it was effective.
Okay, they need to opt into it, or need to organize it.
Yeah, I mean, that's something that.
Everybody in this,
So that kind of lever has been pulled back a little bit. I believe.
Yeah.
et cetera.
So you said, you merged at some point. Who'd you merge with and what were your class sizes before?
Mhm.
And does it work better now?
Our enrollment's been steady, really hasn't changed, maybe 10 to 15, give or take. So that hasn't changed. We merged with Rutland Southwest. So Wells, Pulteney, Middletown Springs. They merged with Rutland Central Supervisor Union, so West Rutland, Rutland Town, Proctor Elementary and High School. So we merged together. I would say not a lot has changed for our school in particular, given that we have steady enrollment. That really hasn't changed at all. And with that merger, we do things together.
So when you merged, it didn't change you, having more kids come to you from some place else?
No,
Okay, did it happen elsewhere? Did they close any schools when they did that? When they merged? Oh,
not for these two school districts.
right.
You're talking about the SU.
Correct, the SU, correct. Yeah, no, everybody had stayed the same. And we provide school choice for our high school students. So our kids can go to public, private, in-state, out-of-state. If it's out-of-state, there's an average in-state tuition that follows that student, which I think is an attraction for Rutland Town.
How is that? Do you know that average, that what they pay if you got to go out of state?
It's the average high school tuition so that's announced every year. So it's the statewide average, and that's, so if you go to a private school in Pennsylvania, for example, they would pay that. Not more than that, because oftentimes it's a lot more expensive.
What size classes are you? What's your average class size?
17 to 18.
Okay.
Mhm.
And one of the things that this committee is thinking about as we think about this big thing we're dealing with here, but because of everything from district size, the school, probably what's the best school size for different ages,
Mhm.
and then what's the best class size.
Yeah.
So what would your advice be to us for your?
Excuse me. Sometimes it's also your cohort of students. So you can have, I would guess that if you look at third grade reading scores across the country, you're going to see the neediest readers in that cohort because they came to kindergarten and in masks. So all those phonics skills, again, I have no data to back this up, say from my experience, they struggled learning those phonics skills because they couldn't see their teacher speaking. So I'm just saying my third grade cohort, and I've talked to other friends that are working in other states, they're like, last year, they're like, yes, it's second grade. Why is your second grade? And I said, well, this is what I think. They learned, came to kindergarten and everybody was in masks. So that's like a needy cohort. So I have 2 sections of every grade except kindergarten. I have 44 kids in kindergarten. Some of them come in knowing how to read. Some of them come in that are not potty trained. So there's a huge discrepancy from that. So I have 3 sections of kindergarten because I challenge any one of you to get 22 of them ready for recess.
Yeah.
Pardon me. So that's a good question. Sometimes I've had teachers that have said, they like higher numbers, 18 is a magic number to somewhere 15. So I would say anywhere in that range, because if you have some really explosive behaviors and you can have one of those kids in your room, that changes the whole need of that classroom. So it can really depend on the cohort. But I would not like to see, for me as a parent, under 15.
A parent and a teacher.
Me personally, as a parent and teacher, 15. Yeah. It just gets tough. You want to, have other kids collaborate, and there's only so many groups you can make. So when you get smaller than that, it's hard.
So your school, you said is how many, 350?
Around 350, give or take.
At K through 8.
Preschool through 8th grade. Yep. So we have two full day preschool programs in our school. Mhm.
Yes.
Well, I mean, I just never do want to miss an opportunity to ask our customers their thoughts. So I don't know if you feel comfortable if we ask your kids,
Oh, yeah.
what worked for them, or what didn't work.
What worked for me was like when a teacher would sit up on the board and give like direct information. Like my math teacher, I would say in like 5th grade, Miss Holden was like my favorite math teacher of all. She could give me a problem and she just lay it on paper. She'd go with it through me until I was like, I got it, I can do it. Give me a different problem. And it was like the favorite time of year where I could just like, she'd sit down with me, she'd give me a problem, and she'd just be like, now times 2 times 2 or 4 times 4, and then you'll get your problem. And it just was direct information that goes face to face. So it wasn't just someone who was on the board teaching a whole group of kids, which I mean, like now I'm in middle school, that's what all my teachers are gonna do because they only have like 45 minutes with me a day. But it was when a kid was able to just go face to face with my teacher, that was like the best for me.
Mm-hmm. Is math a subject you take now?
Yeah, I love it.
I wish I had that in 5th grade.
What do you think about your class size?
Well, this
How many
year
kids are
it's
in your class? Like what works for you?
98. Or like out of my whole 7th grade.
Well, just what do you think about your class size?
How many in your class?
Classroom.
Class.
Like 20.
Do you like that? Yeah, better
It's
or
not bad, but I like my ELA class. There's like 12.
compared to elementary school?
Oh, I like English. Better. I don't understand the question.
So you like 12 kids? Is that like a homeroom?
Oh no, it's my ELA class. It's like it's kind of small though.
Is that English? I
Yeah.
don't even know what you like.
It's English. Yeah.
Anything else from anybody? It's been really helpful. So you said at one point that you were talking about your teachers wanting the 2 hours. to get
Yeah.
at the beginning. Do you actually have to get permission to do that with them?
Relatively speaking, I mean, I can find pockets of time to give them. But typically, yeah, you need to have an agenda and
So, okay, so you need to go above in order to get the ability to.
I think our teachers are always asking for, and I said 2 hours just to say,
Yeah.
but they're always just saying, is there more time for us to collaborate within the building?
Yeah.
And it's just, there's a lot of work to be done. So like we updated our math program this year. So it's like, well, that in-service time is, we're talking about Bridges 3 or our writing professional development that we're doing. So it's just that gift of time. I have a retired teacher that's running for the school board in Rutland Town this year, and she has said, Sarah, what can I give to teachers? Like you ask for volunteers. I said, the best thing you could give them, go cover a lunch duty or a recess duty. So I do that during the holidays, December, for every one of my staff members. I'll say, surprise, today's your day. And they're like, yes, I have 45 minutes of uninterrupted, unexpected planning time. And so she comes in and that they talk about that all the time. They can't wait for her to come in. And it's just that time to, you don't always get.
Do you ask parents to come in and watch? I know they'd have to have a background.
Yeah.
Do they advertise quite often saying, hey,
We're always,
parents or grandparents saying, give our teachers a break, come and watch the kids eat or play?
yes, and there has not been a long line of people
Yeah.
willing to do that. I think especially after COVID, I asked for that and they're like, no, and finding substitutes, that's a whole nother struggle too.
Talk to us a little bit more. You talked about I think you said early in this presentation that you develop a lot of your own curriculum.
Yeah, not me personally.
Well, school
Yeah,
teachers within your.
yeah,
school.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay. And how do you go to look at, as you're doing that, you look at model curriculum and then make it conform to what works for you? Or do you sometimes have teachers just get together and look at something pretty original to your school?
So with the merger too, we now have a process. So if we want to look at any curriculum, anything, we need to have it vetted higher ups. But prior to the merger, when we started our math program Bridges, which is what I would do if we were to do this again, is that there was this is when the Common Core came out, so I'm dating myself, but there was math programs and there was a team of teachers across the district that literally unpacked the box and made sure it was, yes, is this Common Core? Okay. And then they piloted that within a classroom. So they maybe picked 2 or 3. And then based upon that, they were like, this is what's best for kids. So it was more grassroots. But I think for the reading and literacy, that was really just, we saw a need, we saw that it could fit and help kids, and we just went ahead and did it.
Thank you. Yeah, really insightful and helpful for us to do that. So.
And I welcome you to come visit anytime.
Another question?
Well,
Yeah.
not a question, thank you, but just a comment, perhaps for the committee. I think, your testimony was super helpful. I do think it would be great to hear even more from, principals and teachers, especially about the district sizes and the access to different services. And, for different schools being able to, reach up the road to, maybe get a tutor for a student or, whatever they might need instead of, confining schools to these boundaries in which they can't access different services. So, it was very helpful. I think somewhere that would be good.
Which raises a question, why can't we cross district? Like you look across the road and say, they got a person that we could use.
Mhm.
Why can't you call over there and say district, whatever? Why can't we use that? What's the voodoo that we can't do this?
So we don't pay for them.
But they're gonna get paid anyway.
And pardon me, hazing, harassment, and bullying, that's another time consuming process. There may be a district that has somebody that just does that. But that falls on principals, administrators, behavior specialists, et cetera. And I've even been like, can we have somebody like that for our district? But they work for somebody else.
Larger district would perhaps contain. one or
Yeah.
two that we.
Yeah.
Which is what, I think you said that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you given I don't know if we asked this question, have you given a thought to how many districts we should have? We've heard 5. Have you given any thought to that?
No.
Okay.
I don't envy your jobs at all. And again, I thank you for your service because I know it is a thankless job for sure. I wouldn't be the first person to ask that question too. No, I do not know.
Do you have a cell phone policy?
Yeah.
Yep.
We're old school.
Old school.
Yeah. Yeah. We've had a cell phone policy since I started. And so it was funny when my superintendent's like, we were talking about cell phone policies and cell phone policy. I don't know, since we started here.
What is it?
They have to hand them in to their teacher advisory first thing in the morning. So we have like parking lots or like over the door shoe hangers, they plunk them in there. And I tell parents that are worried, there's a phone in every room. We all have walkie-talkies if we're outside. There's ever an emergency, we can find your child. And they have Chromebooks. So at teacher discretion, they can, they can use their Chromebooks, but they don't need to have, if they have an Apple or some electronic watch, that has to go into. So that was added recently. Yeah.
And that's really helped.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. And I think one thing too about Rutland Town is we've had some great field trips. We have a number of amazing things at our school, but our 7th graders always go to Camp Chickacook in New York. And they used to spend a few nights. There'll be a few day trips moving forward. But there's no electronics there. And some of the feedback that I've gotten from kids years later is that, Tetzlaff, that was the best field trip ever. But the tears that come at the start of that trip is shocking because it's almost a withdrawal. Like they are going through withdrawal from their electronic device. So yes, we've had a policy, we've had it for a while.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much for, allowing me to come here. Yeah, it was great to meet you all. Take care.
Thanks for bringing your kids.
Thank you. Hopefully they were okay.
Well, your daughter's very well focused.